On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse Q&A, we talk with Ashley Badgley, Director of Survivor Support at survivors.org, about sexual coercion and support. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse Q&A, everyone. I am Brandon Chadwick, and with me today we have Ashley Badgley. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you for asking. And for those that don't know you, you are the Director of Survivor Support at survivors.org. And today we are going to be talking about a bunch of things. We're going to be talking about sexual coercion. We're going to be talking about technology-based things, especially images. We're going to be talking about coercion in the LGBTQ community. And we're also going to be talking about the importance of survivor stories. But before we break into all of these questions, tell us about survivors.org and your role there and what you do and what the organization does as a whole.
Yeah. So survivors.org is a national nonprofit that is dedicated to ultimately ending sexual violence, but giving a voice to survivors and advocating for it and showing people how to support survivors after an act or an experience of sexual violence. My role as the Director of Survivor Support is particularly to create and make spaces where survivors can come together and share their stories, talk about what they're going through. I run our survivor support groups. We have 2 of those a month. I also, with a colleague, run our survivor art workshop, which we do monthly. We have other survivor spaces like a BIPOC healing circle led by a member of the BIPOC community. And my job is to talk to survivors, give them support, and come up with resources for survivors and those who care about them about how to best, support them and give them space to live the life that they deserve.
So with our Survivor Story podcast, it being a domestic violence podcast, a lot of the stories that we have involve sexual coercion, where the partner doesn't realize that is what it is, that it is sexual violence that is going on. It's hard for people to wrap their head around that. It's hard for them to not just wrap their head about it, want to confront that. And that is what happened, because when you confront that, then you have this new set of scary feelings and thoughts, not just about what happened, but about yourself, everything. So I guess let's talk about, sexual coercion, from what you hear from everyone that comes to your organization, and I guess define it and talk about it a little more, because it is tricky and confusing.
Yeah. So we actually have a definition of sexual coercion, and we describe it in terms of sexual violence as the act of using pressure, threats, alcohol, or drugs, or force to engage in sexual activity with someone, right? So they may think that they're consenting to something, but it's really consent with a caveat. It's consent because of something else. So sexual coercion is threats. It is shaming someone, using substances, pestering, begging someone to do something, quid pro quo, power imbalances, lies, manipulation, and even peer pressure. And so it's a lot easier to just be a survivor of domestic violence or just be a survivor of sexual violence. But when they're both involved, it can make things feel a lot more complicated.
And can another one be that no matter what the reaction is, you're afraid of reactions, whether it could be a violent reaction or whether it be a guilt reaction. I think there's possibly various different avenues of someone's emotions that you're caretaking and might go into, sexual coercion could happen out of that because you're afraid of whatever those responses will be, whether they be, one that you deem dangerous or one where, you feel bad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot, you know, easier in certain circumstances to say yes to a sexual activity as opposed to facing physical violence, right? Or I feel bad because I'm in a relationship with this person and I should want to have sex with them, or they're making me feel bad because they don't feel loved or they don't feel supported. So it's my responsibility to give in to sexual coercion. Like something's wrong with me that I don't want to do this, and they are right and they're being upset that I would not want to do this. So I'm gonna go forward and have sex or engage in sexting or send them images or whatever, because that's my responsibility in a relationship. A lot of people have that thought, and it's not just from their, abuser, it's also from their families, the media, all of these things telling you that people are owed sex, and they're not.
So, you know, I guess when both of those things are combined, when you have domestic violence combined with sexual violence, um, in your experience with the groups and the organizations that you're with, you know, that person is coming for, healing. What do you usually say to them when when they come to you with this? Like, how do you integrate them back into feeling normal and that their decisions are something they can trust when it comes to coercion, because it could get tricky after a while because you've been used to some experience in a way, and now things kind of get muddled. It's hard to kind of navigate that, is my assumption going forward.
Yeah, sexual coercion is not indicative of a person's, like a person who is a victim or experiences sexual coercion is not at fault for that, and it is not a negative piece of their character. It is coercion. People are very good at convincing people to do a lot of things that they don't want to do, and when the consequences of not doing that and feel higher, like the stakes feel higher than actually engaging in the sexual activity, it's actually really easy to see why someone would make that choice or be convinced into that choice. So what I do is I explain it's not your fault. It's unbelievably common. Like it happens every day. It happens in so many different types of relationships. And the reality is they have become aware of something probably for the first time or for the first time when it comes to sex. And that can be really scary. So bringing them sort of back down and saying, this is normal, this is common. And in a group, sometimes I'll say, does anyone else want to share their experience, or has anyone else been through this? And the majority of hands, including my own, go up because sexual coercion is common.
And when it comes to the LGBTQ community, what are, the differences, and what are the things you wanted to kind of discuss surrounding this?
Yeah. So for queer folks, it is like it can be really difficult when it comes to especially young people, like figuring out who you are, figuring out your sexuality for anyone of any, sexual orientation. But if you're in the LGBTQIA plus community, you have this, you may or may not have come out. You may or may not feel the need to come out. Oftentimes we see that the sexual coercion in that community is threats of outing someone. So engage in this with me, or send me this, or do this, or I'm going to tell your friends, I'm going to tell your family, I'm going to tell everyone that you're gay or trans or bi or whatever your, situation is. In that, in the consequences of that, especially for young people, can feel life or death. If they're worried that they might get kicked out of their home, if they're worried that their friends might not like them anymore, that's going to put them in a position where that they're going to do whatever it takes to save that aspect of their life. And it's truly devastating. They shouldn't have to go through that. But it also contributes to a higher rate of suicidal ideation amongst queer youth, is the not just homophobia that exists in general, but also this fear of being ostracized and judged, which can lead to acts of sexual coercion, particularly when it comes to threats from other people who may or may not have gone through that themselves. So.
And when it comes to technology-based things, and especially nowadays, it's a big issue. So I guess talk to us about the technology based images and sexual violence.
Yeah. So something we say at survivors.org all the time is online is real life. People don't think it's real life, but it's real life. There's some stat that says up to 90% of US adults have engaged in consensual sexting and consensual digital sexual activity, which is fine, totally normal, common, healthy. But it's when it becomes, people take advantage of that. So oftentimes we have people sending each other consensual nude images or explicit messages, and that is part of their sexual relationship. But one person, wants to leave the relationship, or they break up, and then someone says, you need to continue sending me these or continue doing this, or I'm going to send this to your family. I'm going to send these pictures to your friends. I'm going to post them online. That is a crime. I mean, but it's incredibly common. We have people sharing, even just showing a friend and not sending someone, just showing them a nude photo on your phone of someone else. If that person didn't say you can do that, that is an act of sexual violence. And so sexual coercion, especially we see with young people, but people of all ages, we have folks, entire bodies being threatened to be exposed to just random people without their consent. And that's going to make someone do whatever they can to protect that, especially if with people's ability to post things anonymously or share things and not kind of leave a trace with different forms of technology.
And survivors.org, you have groups. So there's support groups, they're free groups. So let's talk about the importance of survivor voices and the impact of survivor voices, and their ability to share amongst themselves. So talk about the groups, what you see and how these groups, these mostly peer supported groups, are beneficial for everyone.
Yeah, so I've been running this group for a while. I'm also a licensed therapist, but I do not run this group as a therapist. I run this group as a peer survivor. Our groups regularly have more than 20 people attend, which is a pretty high number for a support group in a lot of spaces. We had one last night, and obviously I'm not going to speak about anything that happened in that group, but a topic that came up was people being sexually assaulted more than once in their life, experiencing sexual violence multiple times, and questioning what is wrong with me. Why does this keep happening to me? Do abusers just see something in me that is weak or bad? And having a conversation about, one, the same thing, asking folks if they've ever been through that, and a bunch of people raising their hands. But it's really about learned experiences. If we learn at a young age that people don't treat our bodies with respect, if that's our experience as children or teens, or that the way to get attention, the way to get access to food, activities, friends, is to engage in any sort of sexual activity, that's going to be a learned behavior that we expect in all of our relationships. So we may not understand that someone being mean to us is not okay in a relationship if that's the only experience we've had. So it comes into play a lot with sexual coercion. We have people that say, when I was 20, I let this happen to me because he was my boyfriend or she was my girlfriend. But the reality is, this didn't happen to them because of anything that was their fault. Someone did this and someone took advantage of a situation. So we often talk about coercion in the group, but the group is there for people to not feel crazy, for lack of a better word. You have other people saying, yeah, I've been through that. Yeah, I've been neglected. I've been abused. I've felt these horrible things about myself. And I've also come to the realization that I'm not a horrible person. It's a lot easier to express empathy for other people than it is for ourselves. And a group is a really good place to give yourself some of that care that you give to others.
And when it comes to the group, because we run our own groups, do you see the same thing that I do, in the sense of someone kind of comes in, they're a junior member of the group, and they are not doing well. They need a lot of help. They need a lot of support. And the way our group works is, eventually, if the person on day one can give support to other people, but over time, sometimes it takes people a little bit to contribute, or supporting someone the right way, and really listening, and giving really good words of support and understanding. Do you see that when those people who have come in, and start to kind of give those support to other people, the change that starts to happen in them, where this terrible thing happened, and I'm dealing with this terrible thing, and I'm trying to cope with this terrible thing and heal. But part of that healing is, this terrible thing that happened to me is of value. My experience in how I'm handling this, whether it is a good way to handle it or a bad way to handle it. Not that there's a good or a bad way, but that someone feels okay that you handled it just like I did. I freaked out in this way. I did this. I felt like this. Those feelings we don't want to go into are valuable for people to hear, and to support people how your journey went. And sometimes the roughest journeys are the ones that have the most value to everyone, because it makes everyone feel that they're okay.
Yeah, we certainly, I think what comes to mind is addiction. We have a lot of people in the group who have, after an act of sexual violence, they've struggled with addiction, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or something else. And they're sober, they're getting help. And when other people are struggling with addiction and they hear, me too, right? That's such an incredibly powerful thing, making someone feel like they are not the only one and that they are not doing it wrong. There are maladaptive and adaptive and, in quotes, healthy and unhealthy ways to respond to things, but none of them are wrong or bad, right? If I engage in, excessive drinking or hypersexuality after experiencing something, what I'm doing is not bad. It's not healthy for me. It's not, an ideal way of coping. It doesn't make me a bad person. What happened to me was bad. What that person did was bad. And I am just doing my best to survive. as long as you survive and you get to the group, we can have these conversations. And nothing makes me feel better than when a group member who's been there many times says to someone who's new, you'll like it here, or this space is really supportive. That is the best feeling in the world.
And when it comes to, because you use the word addiction, and when it comes to that word and you think of it in drugs or alcohol and things like that, in my experience, the best thing to do, or the best thing is to not hide it. So if someone were to come to the group and be like, do you know what? If this was an addiction group and they said, I drank this week, I did this on this day, I drank on this day, I drank on this day, this is how I'm feeling about myself right now, da 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 da. That in itself is a massive win. You didn't hide it. You weren't scared to hide it. You're open about it. And when you're open about it, there are way more paths to healing. When it's in the dark is when you can start spiraling down. You're not asking for support. You're at it alone. And other people can say, like, it's okay if you drank again. It's not, you're not a bad for doing it. Relapses happen. These things happen. Triggers can happen. Things without triggers can happen. You know, I have this thing written down here with our talk, which is our talk beforehand, where I think you said you're celebrating wins. And it's okay to celebrate wins, and it's great to celebrate wins, but there's going to be some people in the group that don't have any wins right now to celebrate, and that's okay too. You know? And to focus on, like, we're going to celebrate wins, but there's no one path to getting to where you need to go. And for a while, you're going to have losses. Just like in an abusive relationship, the person's going to go back on average 7 times. You know, that's gonna happen, and we have to accept that. In baseball, you're successful if you're a great baseball player if you only get a hit 3 out of every 10 times. It gives you the it frees your mind to fail, and that failing is okay, and that it's a part of getting to where you have to go. I don't know where I was going with that, but I just wanted people to know that it's not linear. There will be some people that are like, snippity, snappity, snoo. I'm like, whatever, I'm good. But like, that's rare. That's rare.
Yeah, I think about, not to get too like meta and deep into it, but failure can be a win, right? Because you've admitted it, you've come to the group to talk about it. Like, to talk about a mistake is not a bad thing. We have people come to the group who say, sorry, I haven't been here in a month. I was in the hospital because I tried to kill myself. That is, one of the lowest moments of that person's life. And I'm so grateful that they're still here. And them getting that help is not a failure. Them making that attempt, a horrible thing, and that happened to them, a horrible space they were in, but that does not mean they're a failure. And so I find people who come and express that pain, to be incredibly hopeful and brave. And I think about, we have some rules in the group. We want you to show up sober. We want you to, in the group. And we don't engage in very like intense, in-depth descriptions of sexual violence, because that can be, we don't need to talk about what happened to us to be empathetic and supportive to each other in terms of like details, of graphic details. But when people tell us their worst moments and their lowest moments, that is a win to me, because they've come to a space that they feel supported and safe enough to share that. Because there are some places where they would share that and they would not be supported in this way.
So tell us where everyone can find these groups and what times they run.
So survivors.org is the website. Our social media is at PAVE Info. Our groups meet, the regular support group meets the first and third Wednesday of each month at 7 p.m. Eastern, for Pacific. Our art workshop, which is kind of a support group in which we just do some art prompts, is the last Wednesday of the month at same time, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Our BIPOC Healing Circle is the second Wednesday of the month, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific.
And everything can be found at survivors.org.
Yep, everything.
And what do you have in anything planned for the future? Or do you guys, is it a not for profit? Is it a charitable organization? If so, how can people donate to keep you guys going?
Yeah, so we've been very impacted by the federal government grant money being removed. And so funding is huge for us. We are a 100% donation-driven organization. You can donate by going to survivors.org. It's on our front page. You can check out our social media. Our primary goal is to create as many free support spaces as possible for survivors.
Well, Ashley, I really want to thank you for being here, sharing all of your knowledge, and I really hope that people use your groups. And if people want to donate, I'm going to leave every bit of your information in our show notes. So just a big thank you for being here with us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.